a chance to celebrate another victory. First two Super Bowl appearances for Philly didn't go the way they wanted, but they've got two in the last 8 years. It's interesting, both came against reigning Super Bowl champions. This time, they stopped Kansas City's quest to be the first ever three-time Super Bowl champions in a row. Joined now by Louis Riddick from New Orleans, where Philadelphia doesn't just win the Super Bowl, they obliterate Kansas City and derail the Chiefs' hope for a three-peat. Louis, to win the game's one thing, but to leave absolutely no doubt at all about who was who and what was mind-boggling to me. You witnessed it with your own eyes. What stood out about how Philadelphia did what they did tonight?
Well, it's interesting. Look, I think first and foremost, Scott, the power and the ferocity of the Eagles' defensive front was something to behold. It had Patrick Mahomes acting very un-Patrick Mahomes-like right from the get-go. And he wasn't sharp tonight, and I think he would tell you that too if he was being honest with himself, and he's honest with himself. But they just got after him with just 4 rushers and no need to send 5 or more with consistency. Their pressure rate was up over 50%. And they really were compressing the pocket from outside in. Look, Josh Sweat just absolutely went off. Nolan Smith went off in terms of their ability to get off the ball with speed and power. Milton Williams was going just absolutely berserk. I mean, and they were just, it was the constant, just the hustle and the effort and the intensity. So I think that was the thing that really changed this game in a way that you knew Philadelphia was going to seize control of it and not let it go, and they weren't going to let Patrick get back in it. But I think even more so on the offensive side of the ball, when Philly had the ball. Look, Steve Spagnuolo was very, very intentional in terms of trying to take Saquon Barkley out of this football game and saying, hey, look, we're just going to put it on the arm, of Jalen Hurts and make him win the football game throwing the football. And if we can do that and he does win the game, we'll tip our hat. Well, they have to tip their hat tonight because they took Saquon out of this game. They held him to under 60 yards rushing. But Jalen Hurts right from the get-go was very, very, sharp in terms of his ability to see the field, get through first, second, third progressions, throw the football with accuracy outside the numbers in particular. You saw in the second half he started pulling the ball down and running it when he needed to. He made one mistake on the interception to Brian Cook where he got fooled by the late rotation of the corner blitz coming off the boundary. But other than that, he was perfect. That's how you wind up being MVP. So really, look, Kansas City did what they wanted to do defensively in terms of shutting down Saquon.
Right.
Jalen Hurts answered the bell. And then on the other side of the ball, they had no answer for the ferocity of the front four of the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's something that has been in place for a long time. That philosophy of building the thing front to back, inside out. Same thing New England does. Same thing all the great football teams do in modern day football. And tonight you saw it unleashed in all its fury. And Patrick Mahomes, as great as he is, he had to play perfect and he wasn't on his game tonight. And on top of it, they beat their offense up, that being the Philadelphia Eagles defense versus Kansas City offense. They beat them up tonight, and that was the name of the game.
I've covered golf my entire career in this business, and Louis, when someone breaks through and wins a major, often there is this rush to say, oh, they're going to win a bunch of them, and I always pump my brakes and say, hold on, it's hard to win one, man. Like, to suggest that you're going to go win a bunch of them feels like a mistake. In saying that, I look at this Philadelphia team, the way they're constructed, their youth across the board, and I think it wouldn't be a stretch to think that this is the beginning of something in Philadelphia. How would you assess that?
Yeah, as long as all the primary players stay healthy, yeah, you can see that. It takes on its own identity. But, yeah, at its core, the core here in Philadelphia is solid. It's rock solid, and it's super talented. So, yeah, look out, NFC. They could be on to something here.
It certainly looks that way. And look, Kansas City arrived with a chance to make history, and it was not just derailed, but it was totally knocked off the tracks by what Philadelphia did. And no way does that disparage Kansas City's greatness. They've been great. Tonight, Philadelphia was just that much greater, Louis. Appreciate the time and the perspective as always.
Of course, man.
Know what Hurts was thinking in those few seconds as he pondered his answer before he said it means a lot. Record-breaking run in the playoffs for Hurts, passing for 5 touchdowns, rushing for 5. First player to reach those marks in a single postseason. Also the first player to throw and rush for 10 touchdown passes across a postseason career, and he is just 26. There are many more pages and chapters to be written, you'd have to think. SportsCenter on the road is presented by Geico. Visit now with my guy, Ryan Clark, one of the stars, obviously, of Monday Night Countdown, and a guy there on site, RC. And one of the things I appreciate most about you and what you do both with us and on your podcast, The Pivot, is you explore growth as human beings. Where none of us are finished products. And I look at the quarterback for Philly, I look at their head coach, and you think about where they've been at various times in their life. And people want to grade them as if it's a finished project, but our journey, if we're lucky, isn't ever done. And I'm interested in how you view, let's start with the head coach. And that guy that I hand up, I thought, man, I'm not sure about this dude. He's a Super Bowl champion now. Where do you begin with him?
You know what I said earlier on tonight to someone? I said, thank God Nick Sirianni didn't fire himself when everyone outside of that building was calling for his job, saying he wasn't behaving in the way that a head coach should behave. The man just kept coaching, and he's a true testament to do the job to the best of your ability until it's no longer your job. You saw his continued growth, not only as a coach when it came to what they did schematically, but when it came to who he was as a person, who he was as a leader of men. And as the season got longer, I started championing.
So is Jalen Hurts. And here's a guy who went through it at Alabama, didn't blink, right? Has always behaved, even as a young man, like a CEO in charge of not his brand, but who he is as a man. And I just have such admiration and appreciation for that. And you knew Spags was going to say, all right, we're not going to let Saquon beat us. We're going to see if number one can. Well, that defense did. But how about Hurts and his level of play tonight? What stood out to you?
You know, I've been saying through the last few weeks, let's not forget what we've seen from Jalen Hurts in the biggest moments of his career. And I think tonight he showed again exactly who he can be when he's called upon. From the early pass to A.J. Brown that was called back because of OPI, I felt like Jalen Hurts was locked in. And then you looked at the way that he used his legs. He extended plays, the physicality in which he played with, and the poise he displayed the entire game, especially when Spags brought pressure. I'm going to say this, and I don't know if he'll be mad at me, but I hope that he won't. Jalen and I have developed a friendship over this season. We met at Up Fronts, and we continued to talk. We continued to communicate. And I was always impressed that every time we spoke, every time that we text, all he talked about was winning. All he talked about was focusing on the main thing and how he needs to continue to get better to allow his team to achieve the ultimate goal. And to him, I say, brother, you did that. You were steadfast in your belief in yourself, steadfast in your belief in God, steadfast in your belief in this team, and now you get to reap the reward as a Super Bowl champion.
He was great. That defense was outrageous, Ryan. And I understand that this Kansas City team is not a juggernaut offensively, but they're not 14 yards on 16 plays either. And that Philly defense, we talked about them a lot on Countdown, but I'm asking myself now, I don't think we gave him enough love. We got all next year to figure all that out. My gosh, what a performance. Where do you start?
I mean, but Scott, let's be real. We watched the Washington Commanders have early success against this team. We thought at one point Matthew Stafford was going to drive the football and score late in that game to push it into extra minutes in overtime. And so let's not just act like they were this every single game. What we saw tonight, to me, was a first-half performance that goes down as one of the best first-half performances we've ever seen in the Super Bowl. And I'm talking about teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm talking about teams like the Baltimore Ravens. It was that dominant. And no matter what we say about the Kansas City Chiefs not being explosive, not being your normal Kansas City Chiefs, this is a team that won 15 regular season games and didn't try to win the last one. This is a team that scored 32 points to beat the Buffalo Bills and Sean McDermott's defense. And what we saw tonight was the Philadelphia Eagles defense taking their belt off and putting it on the tail of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I'm going to say this. I thought the roster was better, Scott. I thought player for player defensively, they were better than the Kansas City Chiefs were on the offense. But I never thought that that would trickle down to number 15. For Patrick Mahomes to seem rattled in the way that he was, for Cooper DeJean and Zach Bond to take advantage of the way that he tried to get the football out of his hands, and for that rush to absolutely dominate in the way that they did, there wasn't enough film you could watch before this game that would make you predict that. It was an epic performance by this defense and Vic Fangio.
Well said, perfectly said. That'll be the last word. RC, I appreciate you. Stay well until we cross paths. I hope it's soon, all right?
I appreciate you too, my boy.
Man, that defense was spectacular throughout the season, but particularly tonight. The fingerprints of that Vic Fangio defense all over the Lombardi Trophy. Mahomes dropped 42 times. Philly did not blitz once. That's insane. They still pressured him 16 times, and Mahomes took a career-high 6 sacks. Asked after this loss, what went wrong?
I threw 2 interceptions in their end. I mean, I threw a pick 6, and I threw a pick that they returned to the 5-yard line, and they scored immediately after. So when you give a team 14 points, especially a really good football team, a Super Bowl football team, then not a lot of good things happen. And so that's why I take ownership in this loss more than probably any loss in my entire career, is because I put us in a bad spot. And even though we put up some stats at the end of the game, those stats didn't really matter because I'd already kind of lost the momentum for this entire team. And so I have to be better at not turning over whenever it's not going my way, trusting my defense, trusting the rest of my team to get those stops until I can figure out what we need to do as an offense. Anytime you lose a Super Bowl, it's the worst feeling in the world. They'll stick with you the rest of your career. I mean, you only get so few of these, and you have to capitalize on these, and they hurt probably more than the wins feel good.
Listen, they all hurt. You get this far. You battled your tail off to get this far. Very, very hard to do. And, you know, we spent a lot of time doing this. And it's not a hobby, right? So we're in it the whole way, and spent a lot of hours doing it as players, as coaches. So it's going to hurt. They all hurt when you get to this level, and these things happen. Three-peat aside or any of that stuff, that you get this far and you don't play as well as you want to, it hurts. We've got a great nucleus of players, and so like we've done before, we work on the things that we're not doing well at. You know, we all take responsibility for it. And, you know, you listen to Pat, you listen to these other guys, that's how they are. They're stand-up guys with it. The coaches are stand-up about it. You know, they did a better job than what we did. And that starts with me, and it's, you know, it's hard to face. It's hard to look at because